What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Active San Diego podcast, episode number 2. I got here with me my man Mike from Superfood Superhuman. What's going on, Mike?
How's it going, Nima?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Mike and I want to thank you for listening and investing your time in your busy schedule with us. My name is Nima Enayati. I'm a doctor of physical therapy with Pro+Kinetix Physical Therapy and Performance, and we're located in San Diego, California. So our goal with this podcast is to share with you some of the insights of the local experts around all things health and fitness. And so, if you guys that are listening consider your health and fitness a priority, then stay tuned because we got some good stuff coming for you. So again, I want to thank you, Mike, for coming on to the podcast and joining me on this episode. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I know we've been chatting about this for a little bit, and you and I both kind of share a lot of things in common with what we want, our goals, what we want to achieve. So I think maybe we could just dive right in. Why don't we start with you a little bit? Give me a little background of how you got into your business now, Superfood, Superhuman, what your background is in general. Fill me in.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for the introduction, Nima, and thanks so much for having me on. So my story starts, I grew up over on the East Coast in Massachusetts for about 25 years with a 4-year stint down in Charleston, South Carolina, which I think helped me sort of branch out and move to the West Coast, experiencing warmer weather and wanting to get away from the cold winters. Went back up to Boston for 2 years and definitely suffered from some of that the seasonal depression. But in any case, I grew up playing sports, basketball, baseball, lacrosse, pretty much the whole 9 yards. And I started to do some calisthenics and some handstands, a lot of like full body weight type of exercises with one of my best friends, one of my childhood buddies that introduced me to these workouts. And I just became obsessed with them, which was great because I hadn't changed my workout routine in like 6 years and I just needed something new. But I was obsessed to the point where I was doing like 2-a-days. I was literally throwing up these Olympic rings on a tree branch every morning and every night, seeing the sunrise and the sunset, which was an incredible experience. But I feel like humans tend to learn the hard way. And I think I just never thought about the prehab or the rehab game. And it wasn't like one instance, but just over time, I tore my body down a little bit. And I ended up getting a labrum tear in my left shoulder. So that sort of led me to studying the human body. And then that led me to nutrition. So big silver lining there, which was great. And because of that, I had always kind of known that SoCal was sort of the mecca for all health and wellness and nutrition, and was lucky enough to go visit a buddy in Santa Monica about 4 years ago, and did a golf trip in San Diego with my brother a few months after that, and decided that I wanted to make the move out to SoCal. So I did that in August of 2019. So it'll be about 3 years in the next few months here, which is wild. It's gone by super fast. And then COVID hit. I think that was a big silver lining for a lot of people. And we were trapped inside for a while, but then I actually got COVID. And this was at the beginning when it was a little bit more serious, so to speak. And so I had nothing to do but literally just sit in my thoughts because I had 2 roommates and had to just be in my own room and come outside only for food. So I just did a lot of deep reflection and realized that I always had a passion for nutrition. And then realized that I'd never really taken a step to actually make it into a potential career. And then I got introduced to meditation and just took some more time for white space, so to speak, to really reflect on what I wanted to do long term. And then I got introduced to a program called IIN, which is the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It's the world's largest online nutrition school, and got my nutrition health coaching certification in May of 21. And then I just recently got another hormone health certification through that same program. And then I've also done a short course with Stanford Health amongst, reading tons of books and podcasts. So then I launched my business launched my Instagram page in January of 21, and then filed my LLC in July of 21, filed for my trademarks and my logo and my brand shortly after that too. And and now I work one-on-one with busy professionals to help them maximize their health, their wellness, and their nutrition.
Yeah, great. I know you and I have chatted a little bit, a few times about the importance of nutrition and how, you getting into this space, how important it is that people start from the inside. I think a lot of times people are super concerned about their physical well-being and staying active. And I actually had Wes, the gym owner at San Diego Fitness, on our last episode of the podcast, and we kind of talked about nutrition for a little brief period of time, and he kind of was going along that same sentiment, is that you want to make sure you start from the inside and you take care of everything internally, and then you can reap the benefits of everything else that comes along with it. So going off of that, why don't you fill us in a little bit about what separates your nutritional program and what you do at your company, maybe over other nutritional programs and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first off, transparency, and then education. And then that third pillar I would say is just sustainable results. I think there's sort of this society of hopping on the bandwagon of a new diet. It lasts for 30 days in the media, and then something else is better, whether it's keto or it's paleo or it's vegan. And that can be super overwhelming because I feel like we just sort of live in a world of misinformation and not knowing what to believe. But I think there's a lot of folks out there, diets I'd say can work to a certain degree. Maybe in the short term, you might lose a little bit of weight depending on what your goals are and everything. I think with my program, I'm here to heal people from the inside out, like you said. I think someone can tell you all day long how many calories to eat, but at the end of the day, that's basically like getting the answers to the math test and not knowing how you got those answers. And that's why I don't think it's sustainable. Whereas my program is, very intimate, very, closely related in terms of the one-on-one cadence. And I'm giving you a lot of education around nutrition. And that's where the awareness change comes into play. And inherently that leads to a more sustainable result that you can create sort of a lifestyle around nutrition versus just, getting in shape for the summer, so to speak.
Yeah, I know you and I had that phone conversation maybe a week or so, or however long it was. And just from my personal experience, I mean, I think you ask a lot more detailed questions than other coaches that I've had in the past. And I think, for somebody that may be like the target market for you, someone who's maybe an active young professional, or even beyond that, maybe a little bit older in age, but someone who might be looking for a little bit more than like, the summer cut or, the winter bulk, as they say. So, and that's why I think the importance of what you're trying to get at is having people understand the why, the how, and that can build a lot of accountability, which I think is what's missing maybe in the nutritional field as a whole, So I think what you do there is great. And I think a lot of people need to really understand the detail of what goes into something like that, a program like that. So it's good to have people offer that kind of experience. So what do you think is kind of the biggest problem with nutrition, I guess, in like the general population today?
Yeah, I alluded to it before, but I think just misinformation. I mean, you can Google search all day long, salt is bad for you, meat is bad for you, meat is good for you, salt is good for you, eggs are bad, eggs are good. And you become overwhelmed. So, not only in the nutrition space, but just in general, I feel like we live in a world of misinformation. So something I always like to preach is really listening to your own body, as simple as that sounds, like finding out what you might react to, what you feel better to. And I feel like that's where I'm sort of that guide on the side that allows to bridge that gap between like the information that you might be learning or educating yourself on and like how you actually feel, and creating a safe space for people to, do that. But I think first off and foremost is definitely the misinformation, but also just straight up malnutrition, and kind of like a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach. I mean, literally the average American, their diet consists of 60% processed food, if you even want to call it food. It's just a sad reality of the standard American diet. If you eat the standard American food and the standard American diet, you're going to get the standard American diseases. And I think, and unfortunately, it's just kind of the way that the human body works, right? I mean, with my shoulder injury, kind of the same deal, but I found a silver lining from it. But humans just kind of learn the hard way. So my whole approach and my whole mission is to help people be more proactive about it, because most people aren't going to think about the potential issue that they're going to have because they don't know the certain deposits that they're putting into their body on a daily basis are going to ultimately lead to something that will be an issue. And yeah, I think that I personally definitely can admit that being an athlete, I always just kind of had that mentality of I'll just burn it off,
Yeah.
or it doesn't matter because I'm still skinny. But the whole skinny fat situation, and the fact that 88% of Americans are metabolically inflexible, meaning that their metabolism doesn't work properly or work the way that it should. And 1/3 of Americans are pre-diabetic, meaning high cholesterol, high blood pressure, insulin resistance, and 90% of them don't even know it. So yeah, food quality and focusing on foods that nourish you and giving your body fuel from the foods you eat is super important.
Now, that generally speaking, that could apply to a lot of people, right? But the active population and people that might consider themselves, gym goers or weekend warriors or even athletes, they might understand their nutrition a little bit better than maybe the active or the average person, I should say. So how would you differentiate, that problem that we see in the general population to the people that are maybe a little bit more active?
Yeah, I think maybe someone who's like overweight or is more of a couch potato, so to speak, or just doesn't have like a lot of motivation. I always think that can be heavily correlated to like hormone health and stuff. But someone who's a little bit more active and like wants to be healthy but doesn't really know where to start, there's definitely a difference there. Someone who just straight up doesn't really care about their health versus someone who's maybe more of an athlete and wants to stay in good cardio shape and wants to eat well, but maybe is never like fully educated on it. I think I've met plenty of people that quote unquote look like they're in shape, but you come to find out that they have all these metabolic issues. So again, like I'm definitely guilty of it. Like growing up playing basketball on the high school team, like 3-hour practices, and then I would literally come home and like just gorge like a large buffalo chicken calzone and would come home from high school like before practice. After school, my parents weren't home, didn't know what to cook, and I would inhale like 4 bowls of cereal, processed food, and conventional dairy that led to all these things, right? And I mean, something that I personally suffered from a lot was like acne and hemorrhoids, which I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that, but it's basically just an inflamed vein in your rectum, and it's from inflammatory foods. And the acne stuff definitely affected my mental health 100%. And just looking back on the photos from like high school and college to where I'm at now, like it's just wild to see the power of food. So I don't know. I've met a lot of people and athletes that like whether they're trying to bulk up or cut down, sometimes it hurts me to see like whether they're just trying to eat like a crazy amount of food or like severely restricting calories and what that actually does to your body from a nutritional standpoint and like energy standpoint or mindset, because gut health is really everything. And I mean, I've even talked to like private chefs that tell me that they're like cooking like fried Oreos for professional football players, and it's like, okay, that's one thing. Like they got obviously bulk up and stuff, but sometimes when you're so focused on the calories and bulking up or cutting down, like you start to sacrifice your health, which is the most important thing in my opinion.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue into what I was going to get into next, which is a pretty hot topic, I think, for a lot of people. And you might get this question with your program, but do calories in and out matter at the end of the day? And to what extent, if they do matter?
Yeah, I think to put it bluntly, I don't think calories matter at all. It's a tough thing to say, and I know it might sound a little bit aggressive, but I mean, literally, calories were once applied to simply just engineering and physics, and then one day somebody decided to apply it to food. They said instead of one slice of bread, it's going to be 100 calories of food, or like instead of one slice of pie, it's 350 calories. But I think oftentimes, again, what I was saying before, we sort of sacrifice our own health just to hit numbers. And yes, it can work inherently, but I don't think that it's as easy as saying like calories in, calories out, because there's something called like the thermic effect of food. Obviously, like 100 calories of an Oreo is going to be a lot different than 100 calories of an apple. Apple is going to be much healthier for you. So like, okay, yes, maybe you're hitting your calories, but like, what are you doing to your body? What are you doing to your gut health? What are you doing to your mental health? So I think it really always depends on your own personal goals. But I mean, like, for example, eating like animal protein or just protein in general, it takes a lot more for your body to digest that food than it would let's say a bag of chips that's the same amount of calories, not to
Sure.
mention like the quality of what those foods are doing to your body. So for the most part, right, like I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting, which inherently from an intuitive sense, like basically, yeah, you're lowering the amount of calories. But I'd never really discourage people from like still eating, healthy, plentiful food in their eating window, because that can be kind of a misconception. And oftentimes, from a severely calorie restricted regimen, a lot of people are losing like valuable muscle mass. That's where most of the weight loss comes from. So yeah,
Mhm.
focusing on like food quality is something I heart. But from a tracking standpoint, when you're first starting, I think like macros are probably more something that you would want to focus on, like high quality protein and high quality healthy fats, and then your quality carbs as well. But sometimes I just see, again, it depends on the person and their situation, but it just breaks my heart sometimes when people focus so much on calories and then they just create this like obsessive, awful relationship with food, and then they start
Mhm.
body shaming themselves, or they sneak in calories that aren't really nourishing their body. Um, so that's always a tough one. I think it's a highly debated topic, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think focusing on like macros, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, depending on your goals, right, I think is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think, with uh I guess our generation, we kind of rely a lot on social media for information, as opposed to going out there and actually researching. And I think that's led to a lot of misinformation. And it's kind of a bummer because you'll scroll through TikTok, which I always talk about with you, and you'll come across a video and this guy saying, it doesn't matter at all what you eat as long as you're eating below how much you're burning throughout the day. Well, how's a
Mm-hmm.
person supposed to know how much they're burning?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the quality of the food absolutely matters because you can develop bad habits from eating, poor quality foods, processed foods. You're messing with your gut bacteria, which is like 80% of how you even build your inflammatory and your immune system, I should say, to begin with, right? So it's kind of a bummer that there's a lot of misinformation out there because uh, for somebody who wants to track their macros, calories in and out, who maybe is trying to get lean and get cut for the summer, well, just because you're under what your threshold really should be and you're cutting 500 calories a week doesn't mean you could still be eating chips and all this other crap that's out there, right? So yeah, I think that's a very important and probably uh, something that we can dive a little bit deeper into. We could probably spend a whole episode talking about something like that. So now you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but and we were just talking about this, does the quality of the food matter? And quality, I think, um, is kind of it's not understood well. So like if somebody wants to go out and buy uh, dried fruit, for example, versus going and getting an actual piece of fruit from the store, that kind of quality, does that stuff actually matter?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I love that you brought that up. I think that to your example there, like sugar from fruit is going to be a lot healthier than just, let's say Skittles or like Sour Patch Kids. That's obvious, right? Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
really healthy. But, you think about fruit juice or like these vegetable juices and dried fruit. The problem with that is the whole point of eating the whole fruit is for the fiber, because that slows the digestion of fructose, which is the main sugar, right, in fruit. But when you extract it and you're just giving your body like a full blown liquid hit of fructose and sugar, it's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that, yeah, just getting back to eating like real whole foods, as simple as that sounds, is so important. And that's where the food quality comes into play. But yeah, I mean, things like dried fruit might be a little bit debatable, but at the end of the day, you're basically just chewing into like, semi-liquid sugar. And
Mm-hmm.
you think about things like high fructose corn syrup, which is like the downfall of the American diet, is put in so much processed food. Something not a lot of people think about, when it comes to like liver disease and liver malfunctions, like the first thing people think about is alcohol. But nobody really talks about sugar, because sugar at a certain level literally becomes toxic to your body. And there's something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, um, that will really mess up your metabolism. And literally, when you have too much sugar, your body doesn't know what to do with it. So your liver just stores it as fat around itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see things like men with like these pregnant bellies, because literally there's just fat accumulating on the inside of their organs, which is not great. So we talk about dad bod and stuff all the time. Like, sure, we can joke about it, but that stuff is no joke. Like, you're literally creating inflammatory cells around your abdomen, and that's where most of the inflammatory cells in your body hang out, is around like your midsection. So yeah, losing weight is obviously important. And I think that my mentality is like, you got to get healthy to lose weight versus lose weight to get healthy. But to your point, your question, like quality, definitely, like quality is king. And I think for me, it took a while to sort of wrap my head around it. Like, you hear these buzzwords like grass fed, and you hear the buzzwords of organic and, you know, pasture raised. And you start asking yourself, like, is that really worth an extra dollar or two? And it took me a while to figure that out. But like, you know, grass fed, let's say, versus conventional fed cows. I mean, when I didn't really like put myself through a certification program and really educate myself enough, I never understood why grass fed was better than corn fed. But corn on the front end is typically genetically modified, actually straight from the FDA's website. About 94% of corn and like 93% of soy is genetically modified, which obviously is great for your gut. And the reason I bring that up is because most of these cows are fed corn, which is not their natural diet. Their natural diet is grass. And as a matter of fact, if they're fed corn too much, they'll die. And the reason that they give them antibiotics is to kill off like the disease that's coming from eating that corn. But antibiotic literally means to kill all life. So yes, it's killing the bad bacteria, but it's also killing the good bacteria. And antibiotics can destroy your gut microbiome. Like, it can literally take a year or two to replenish that, depending on your protocols. So if the cow's eating it, then you're digesting it. It's ultimately going into your gut microbiome. But they're also added hormones, right? Because they want to make bigger cows, which means more meat, which means more money.
Yeah, right.
So the antibiotics, the added hormones, like, that's going to really disrupt, you know, your own body. And that's why, you know, I can sort of deduct that when I ate tons of dairy and like conventional meat, I was getting a lot of acne, which is basically just an inflammation response from your body. Your body's always trying to communicate to you.
Yeah. Yep.
Then you think about things like organic produce. There's something called the Dirty Dozen, which is a list of produce that typically has the most herbicides and pesticides on it, which can also affect your gut. I mean, literally, celiac disease has skyrocketed 400% in the past 60 years. Autoimmune diseases, allergies, like all this stuff comes from just the overabundance of chemicals we have in this country. And that's just the truth. That I think I read a stat somewhere that like there's 70 billion pounds of chemicals poured into the US every single day.
Wow. Jeez.
So we can't win them all, right? But got to do the best you can. So yes, it might cost a little bit more. And that's just the sad reality of like how backwards the system is. Like, you know, genetically modified food, like monocrops, meaning like there's just these farms where they're only farming corn and only doing soy, and they're typically modified. And so the government highly subsidizes these crops. And so like 90% of packaged food comes from corn or soy. Although it might seem like we have a variety in the grocery store, it's all just essentially the same thing, just jumbled up into a different package. So yeah, it's sad that, you know, corn and soy and like the unhealthy food is the cheaper food. But hopefully, you know, I try to encourage people, like, you can vote with your fork, you can vote with your dollar. Like, these companies are literally sprinting towards organic. They're sprinting towards, you know, all these buzzwords because that's what the consumer wants, because they're slowly starting to learn. So you got to do your part, right? And like put your drop in the bucket. But yeah, like grass-fed meat versus conventional, organic produce when possible, pasture-raised eggs. So that's why it's tough. I always tell people, like, when they ask me questions about nutrition, like, it truly always depends, because they'll ask me, oh, is meat bad for you? Is coffee bad for you? Are eggs bad for you? It depends on the quality, and it also depends on the frequency at which you're consuming that food.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up a lot of good points, especially with grass fed versus conventionally fed or corn fed. You know, there are a lot of documentaries that are out there that highlight a lot of these things, and people will end up watching them, and there's a lot of buzz around it, and people will tune in, and then, you know, you'll talk about it, but no action is really taken from the consumer standpoint. It's kind of like, oh, that was informative. That seems like gross when you watch some of these slaughterhouses and stuff, but it's not going to stop us from going and buying the conventional meat because we see that it's a little bit cheaper. And it's kind of a bummer because, yeah, it's kind of backwards, right? You unfortunately have to pay a little bit, and sometimes even a lot of it more to get some of the better quality meats and foods and vegetables and stuff like that, which for the average population, sometimes it's difficult to afford. And I think we are kind of blessed to live in California. Like you were saying in the beginning, it's kind of the mecca for a lot of these health movements. And you see all these like high quality grocery stores like Jimbo's that we have over here, and Whole Foods, of course, and sometimes Sprouts. Exactly. So it's easily accessible for us, but for a large population, a large part of the country, it might not be as accessible. So it's unfortunate that's the case, but that's the world we live in, right?
Yeah, we're trying to change the world one bite at a time. And, with my future, still planning that out. But if I can somehow make influence when it comes to like government policies, I do think that's where it starts.
Absolutely.
So whether I become a functional medicine doctor or, get into political science, like, I want to help people one-on-one, and that's where it starts with that ripple effect. But yeah, really trying to change things at a higher level for sure. And like you said, it's kind of the sad reality, and whether it's social mobility or where you live, like those things are definitely factors. I think that's inherent, just kind of like a thing that we have to deal with and try to get creative with. But, at the same time, try to encourage people like, okay, like how much money, if you're a busy professional, right? How much money are you spending on Netflix? How much money are you spending on Uber Eats or going out and buying alcohol? So like once you start to prioritize and figure out why you should prioritize your health, you start to say, okay, this is more of an investment than an expense. And, a few dollars here and there, maybe adds up, but like, what is it going to save you in terms of potential harm down the road, right?
Exactly.
So in my opinion, obviously, I don't think there's any better ROI, return on investment, than in your own health.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I love the slogan, changing the world one bite at a time. I think that's great, man. So if someone's looking to reach out to you, ask you questions, maybe jump on a phone call with you, what's the best way they can find you or reach you?
Yeah. So just as you see here on my shirt, my company name, Superfood Superhuman. You can find me on Instagram, just all one word, Superfood Superhuman. Same thing on TikTok. And then my website is just superfoodsuperhuman.com. You could go to my website and directly book a call through the Calendly page there. I typically offer like 15-minute complimentary call, just kind of understanding and digesting, no pun intended, exactly where you're coming in at. And then, if things go well there, booking a follow-up call and doing a real deep dive so I can fully customize a plan for people. That's really what I do, because the reality is everyone's bio-individual, and there's just no cookie cutter solution or one diet that's going to work perfectly for everybody. But you can reach me on all the social medias, basically.
Sweet. Mike, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's really, really good to have you. It was super informative. I think it's very valuable to have this kind of information out there as much as we can. So again, I appreciate you coming on, and look forward to working with you a little bit more in the future and see what we can come up with here together.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Dr. Nima. I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. Take care. Have a good one.
You too. See ya.